Gospel of Thomas has got to be one of the most enigmatic documents in all of early Christianity, because here it is, just a book of sayings material. I mean, it's just one after another and after another. Jesus says, Jesus says, Jesus says. And so it's completely unlike the Synoptic Gospels. But even in spite of its difference from the Synoptics, I do think it's drawing directly from the Synoptics, because you see some of Matthew's favourite phrases turning up, some of Luke's favourite phrases turning up. So, for example, Matthew always says, the kingdom of heaven. That's his favourite expression, 32 times in the Gospel. Thomas uses that same expression, the kingdom of heaven. So I think we know that Thomas is using Matthew's Gospel, is using Luke's Gospel, probably even Mark as well. So many synoptic parallels in Thomas that make good sense if Thomas actually has physical copies somewhere of the Synoptic Gospels. I think the Gospel of Thomas comes from a sectarian community, a kind of group that isn't part of what we would think of as mainstream Christianity. Of course, there wasn't a mainstream Christianity in this period, but it's not the same kind of people who are responsible for lots of the texts in the New Testament. And for one thing, they didn't really believe that salvation came through believing in the death and resurrection of Jesus. There's no reference to Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection, and what's more, they certainly didn't think that Christ died for people's sins in accordance with the scriptures. The Gospel of Thomas doesn't like the Old Testament, doesn't like the Hebrew Bible. There's no direct references at all to the Hebrew Bible, and on one occasion when the disciples come to Jesus and say, what do you think about all these prophets that have prophesied about you? Jesus says, they're just dead people. They're dead people. What am I interested in dead people? The living one is among you. And that's Jesus' answer in the Gospel of Thomas to these references to the prophets. I'm a little bit hesitant to use the term Gnostic of the Gospel of Thomas, because we have got genuine, full-blown Gnostic texts which were found at Nag Hammadi, the same place that the Gospel of Thomas was found. And Thomas isn't quite like those. It hasn't got an overblown cosmology. It doesn't tell you in great detail about different emanations proceeding from the divine. But it does have an interest in knowledge. And in fact, the Gospel of Thomas is much more interested in the idea of knowledge than it is in the idea of faith. So in that sense, the Gospel of Thomas is Gnostic, because Gnostic basically means someone that's interested in knowledge. And for the Gospel of Thomas, you attain salvation by getting to know Jesus.